My name is Leo Hayes. For 7 years, I've just been some average guy making up the numbers in this world, with the small caveat that I'm not originally from here. I had just picked up the custom ring I'd ordered from a boutique jeweler downtown. That's when they cornered me. A middle-aged couple dressed in clothes that screamed, "We have more money than God." The man dropped a bomb with his first words, "Son, we're your real parents." The second the words left his mouth, glowing, translucent lines of text started scrolling in front of my eyes. Red alert! Red alert! The scumbag protagonist is about to be claimed by his billionaire family. Damn, wasn't this the guy just complaining to someone that Skylar Rains is 8 years older than him? I bet he's packing his bags to dump her overnight. I feel so bad for my girl Sky. She used to make him instant ramen and always add 2 eggs. Now he's gonna toss her out like trash. I blinked, staring at the empty air, thinking my long overdue system from whatever cosmic entity sent me here had finally arrived. But a closer look revealed this wasn't some pre-written life script. It was the comment section from a trashy drama, floating in my vision. And another thing, since when can you just slander someone in the comments? I'm a one-woman man, through and through. What part of me is a scumbag? The summer I turned 18, the cicadas buzzed so loudly you'd swear they were cooking the air. The moment the bell rang after my last final exam, my buddies and I ceremoniously ripped up our textbooks, threw our arms around each other's shoulders, and marched straight to a karaoke bar. When we finally stumbled out, a torrential downpour had materialized out of nowhere. I was splashing through puddles, making a run for the light rail station, when a blinding set of headlights cut through the curtain of rain. I felt myself get thrown into the air by an immense force. And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was the sterile white ceiling of a hospital room. A woman was sitting by the bed. Her white dress was stained with dark, uneven patches from the rain, but that couldn't hide the startling brightness of her eyes. They looked like a lake holding shattered pieces of light. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She started apologizing the second she saw I was awake. Her voice trembled, and her knuckles were white from clenching her fists. "I'll take full responsibility," she said. The doctor later told me I just had some scrapes, bruises, and a mild concussion, nothing that would cause any permanent damage. When I was ready to be discharged, she wanted to discuss compensation. I told her not to worry about it, but she insisted, so I accepted $2,000 just to put the matter to rest. It was only after I left the hospital, staring at a world that looked completely different from the one in my memory, and recalling the long, vivid dream I'd had while unconscious, that a terrifying realization hit me. I had been transported to another world. Worse, I was in the body of someone who had the same name, face, and age as me. By the time the fall semester started in September, it had taken me nearly 3 months to grudgingly accept my absurd new reality. The original owner of this body was an orphan whose bank account was drier than the Sahara. When it came time to pick a college, his only real option was the local university. As soon as orientation week was over, I started looking for part-time work nearby. A help wanted sign was taped to the glass door of a bubble tea shop. Inside, a girl in an apricot-colored apron was shaking a drink, the afternoon sun catching the ends of her hair and gilding them in a warm, golden light. It was her, Skylar Rains. "What can I get for you?" she asked, looking up. Her expression shifted to surprise when she saw me. When she found out I was an orphan looking for work, she said, "You can work here." After we got to know each other, I learned she had also grown up in the foster care system. During her first internship out of college, an executive tried to leverage his position for favors. She'd thrown a folder right on his desk and chewed him out in front of everyone. With the money she'd saved from work-study jobs, she rented this small storefront, opened a bubble tea shop, and clawed her way through 3 tough years to finally get on her feet. Over the 6 months I worked at her shop, my eyes were drawn to her like magnets. I'd watch the slight curl of her lips as she added fructose to a shaker cup, the elegant arc her wrist made as she mixed a drink. I even got so good I could stare at her face while making a whole drink from start to finish without adding a single extra drop of syrup. My crush was like a glass of unsweetened lemonade, so sour it made my teeth ache. On the first Valentine's Day after we met, I clutched a delicate gold chain I'd spent a month's wages on and cornered her at the shop door after she'd locked up for the night. Snowflakes were melting on my eyelashes. My voice was tight. "Skylar, I'm into you. I wasn't expecting anything to come of it, but I was terrified she'd get a boyfriend one day. I had to take the shot. At least it would give me closure. But she just calmly reached out, brushed the snow off my shoulder, and looked me straight in the eye. I'm 8 years older than you, Leo. Are you sure about this? It took me a second to process what she meant. Then I scooped her up in my arms and spun her around in a few circles. I was grinning like a fool. Then I started kissing her like there was no tomorrow, until she finally grabbed my ear and playfully scolded me. That was 7 years ago. This year I'm 25, and I just picked up the custom-made ring. The velvet box is tucked in the inner pocket of my shirt, right against my heart, burning like a hot coal. I didn't even make it to Skylar before someone stopped me. The air conditioning in the coffee shop was blasting, and I gripped the cold glass in my hand, my knuckles turning white. Across from me, the middle-aged couple sat with perfect posture, their expensive, tailored suits unable to hide the exhaustion and red veins in their eyes. It looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. "You're saying I'm your son," I said, deliberately keeping my voice low. My throat felt tight. "What proof do you have?" My fingers unconsciously traced the condensation on the glass. My mind was a tangled mess. After 7 years in this world, I had long since accepted my status as an orphan. I even liked it. No complicated family drama, just the simple life I was building with Skylar. I never once cared about who this body's biological parents were. And now, here they were, the day before I was planning to propose. Just then, the live stream comments started scrolling again. What's with this scumbag? Shouldn't he be crying and immediately accepting his rich parents? These two old folks are no saints either. They're going to push him to break up with the female lead and humiliate her. But the kid the other woman eventually has isn't even his. Exactly. What goes around comes around. Karma's a bitch. I glanced at the text, and a theory began to form in my mind. The scumbag they were talking about had to be the original owner of this body. But I'm not him. I felt the ring box against my chest. Skylar is my entire world. I would never, ever leave her. "We can do a DNA test," the man said slowly, his voice hoarse but firm. "At Central Austin Medical Center. We can have the results in 2 days." I nodded. Fine. After the test, I flatly refused the woman's request for me to go home with them. I left the hospital, hailed a cab, and headed straight for the restaurant I'd already booked, texting Skylar on the way. I told her where to meet me. For a guy who has true love practically tattooed on his soul, a proposal could never be some sloppy, last-minute affair with a bouquet of roses from a convenience store. I booked the entire rooftop of the Apex Hotel. When I paid, the gorgeous concierge's eyes went wide. Too bad for her. I'm out of her league. From the day we became official, I treated Skylar's shop, Hugh Brew, like it was our family business. I was determined to help her make it a huge success. Being from another world has its perks, after all. Back then, the bubble tea industry here was pretty basic. The menus were all the same: pearls, grass jelly, red bean, and a single cup cost a fortune. Business was just okay. I spent 3 straight nights brainstorming. As the morning light hit the window, I ran to Skylar. "We're starting a price revolution. $2 soft serve cones, $4 large lemonades. We'll be swamped with customers." She rubbed the sleep from her eyes and stared at me. "Are you insane? The cones cost $1.50 to make. What's the point?" I dragged her down to the street behind the university and made her count the people walking by. "Look," I said, pointing at the students clutching a few dollars, hesitating. "It's not that they don't want it. It's that they can't afford it. We build a following first," I insisted. "Once we have the customers, the profits will come." My passionate, gesticulating argument eventually wore her down. She agreed. The first weekend we launched the specials. The line of students stretched from our door all the way to the traffic light. The cash register dinged so much it was hot to the touch. Skylar was so busy she didn't even have time for a sip of water, her bangs plastered to her forehead with sweat. That night, after closing, we collapsed in the empty shop. As we counted the mountain of cash in the register, she suddenly grabbed me and started laughing so hard she couldn't stand up. "I never knew you had such a brilliant little mind," she said. 6. After the business exploded, I came to her with a map covered in circled locations. "Let's open more branches." She chewed on the end of her pen, running the numbers for a long time. Finally, she slapped the deed for the shop on the table in front of me. "I'll mortgage the property." With that, and what we've saved up these past few years, it should be enough. In those days, we were up at dawn to supervise renovations, tracking every bit of progress. She'd lean her head on my shoulder to catch some sleep during bumpy drives, her eyelashes casting soft shadows in the morning light. Late at night, in our tiny apartment, she'd be at the computer reconciling accounts while the printer hummed, spitting out pages that sometimes got stained with grease from the single bowl of ramen we shared. Her fingertips grew calloused. My back ached constantly. But every time we locked the shop for the night and saw the Hugh Brew sign light up the darkness, a sweet satisfaction seeped into our very bones. When we opened our tent store, Skylar's hand was sweating in mine, her palms surprisingly hot. The day we decided to form a corporation and start franchising, she insisted on giving me half the shares. The tip of her pen hovered over the stock transfer agreement. "None of this would have happened without your recipes and your ideas," she said. In just over 6 years, that little bubble tea shop became a publicly traded food and beverage company. The day we rang the opening bell on the stock exchange, Skylar stood under the spotlights in a custom-tailored suit, giving her speech. But her eyes kept flicking over to me. I knew she wasn't looking at the shareholders or the reporters. She was looking at the clumsy kid who had crashed into her world on a rainy night. The goofy guy who sat on the floor with her counting coins. The man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. And now I was a self-made man. Money was definitely not an issue. 7. When Skylar pushed open the revolving door, the evening breeze caught her burgundy dress, making it flutter. I could tell she had gone home to get ready. She sat down, looked out at the warm city lights, then turned to glare at me. "Are you crazy? Booking a whole floor for just the two of us?" I smiled, pulling out her chair. My fingertips brushed against the delicate gold chain she'd worn for 7 years. The very same one I'd given her when I confessed my feelings. It didn't really match her status anymore, but she always said it was comfortable. The waiter brought over the beef Wellington, steam rising from the plate. She paused while cutting into it. "All right, what's the special occasion?" "It's a very special occasion," I said, taking a spoonful of cream of mushroom soup. She raised an eyebrow, about to say something, when the lights on the entire floor suddenly went dark. A single candle flame flickered to life in the darkness. A waiter appeared, pushing a dessert cart. On top of a 3-tiered mousse cake, nestled among the buttercream flowers, was the diamond ring I'd spent 6 months designing, glittering with 1,000 tiny sparks. "Is this?" Her words were cut off by fireworks exploding outside the window. As the first burst of golden red light bloomed in the night sky, she clamped a hand over her mouth. Then came a second, a third, and soon countless sparks were spelling out the words "Sky, marry me" against the twilight. I took the ring, dropped to one knee, and looked up at her. Her eyes were as red as they had been that first day in the hospital. Only this time, her tears were filled with shimmering light. "Skylar Rains." My voice was even shakier than the day I first told her I liked her. "From the moment I crashed into your life at 18, I've dreamed of this day. Will you marry me?" Before I could finish, she threw herself into my arms, snatching the ring and clumsily shoving it onto her ring finger. "Yes, yes, Leo Hayes, you asshole. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for this day?" Her voice was muffled against my shirt, thick with tears. Just then, the floating comments went insane, a dense wall of exclamation points nearly blotting out the night sky. This isn't how the plot is supposed to go. WEF. The scumbag actually proposed. Wasn't he supposed to break up with her today in the original story? I must be reading a fanfiction version. But damn, those fireworks are so romantic, I'm crying. The scumbag got a new soul. TRUE, love wins. This is how it should have been all along. I was about to lean down and kiss her forehead when the weight in my arms suddenly went limp and heavy. Skylar's hands, which had been wrapped around my neck, fell away. Her body slumped as if her bones had dissolved. "Sky!" I panicked, catching her. Her cheeks were burning hot, but her lips were colorless. Her eyes were closed, tears still clinging to her lashes. The candle on the cake flickered, casting dancing shadows across her pale face. The fireworks kept blooming, the words, "Marry me," burning painfully bright against the night sky. As I held her limp body, the light felt like a million tiny needles stabbing me right in the heart. I could hear a waiter's panicked voice in the distance, but it all sounded like a dull roar. 8. The sharp, sterile smell of the hospital stung my nose. I was drifting in and out of consciousness when I felt a familiar warmth as someone gently traced my cheek with their thumb, like the first rays of sun on melting snow. "You're awake?" Skylar's voice was right beside my ear. I pushed myself up and looked at her, then froze. The left side of her face was flushed an unnatural red, with a faint bluish-purple bruise along the edge, as if she'd been slapped. "Hard. But I've been right here the whole time. How could?" I shook my head, dismissing the absurd thought. She leaned in, her nose almost touching my lips. "Pinch my cheek." Her voice was sickly sweet, the end of each word curling like a little hook. It was a playful, coy tone I hadn't heard in a long time. I raised an eyebrow and smiled. "What? You think you're dreaming?" I gently pinched her cheek, careful not to use too much force. When my fingers touched the flushed skin, she flinched. Skylar didn't say anything, just stared at me. Her expression was as complex as coffee swirled with honey, sweet, but with an unreadable bitterness underneath. Her gaze was starting to unnerve me. I playfully tapped the tip of her nose. "What's wrong? You already said yes, you know. It's too late to back out now." She suddenly buried her face in my neck, her arms wrapping tightly around my waist, squeezing with enough force that I felt like she was trying to merge with me. "Leo," her voice was muffled and trembling slightly. "I'm 33. I'm 8 years older than you. Are you really sure about this?" The question was like a needle, jabbing a memory. I pretended to be annoyed, tapping her nose again, a little harder this time. "It's not like you weren't 8 years older than me yesterday." 9. Her skin was warm and familiar under my fingertips, and my heart melted. She might be the chairperson of a public company now, cool and composed in the face of anything. But I was the only one who knew she was also just a girl who would panic and sweat after a minor car accident in a rainstorm. The kind of person who would hide in her office to cry after a business setback, who would whine and need me to feed her medicine when she caught a cold, and who would jolt awake in the middle of the night to ask if I would ever leave her. I'll never forget her 30th birthday, 3 summers ago. We were already doing pretty well for ourselves by then. We were taking a walk along the riverfront downtown. She looked at all the young women in their short skirts and suddenly tugged on my sleeve, a hint of sadness in her voice. "Leo, if I dressed younger, do you think people would assume you're my sugar daddy?" The streetlights stretched her shadow long and thin on the pavement. The insecurity in her eyes was like shattered starlight. That night, I stood her in front of the full-length mirror. I had her try on the Wolford stockings and Christian Louboutin heels I bought for her, and I spent the entire night proving a point. I wasn't in love with some young, naive girl. I was, and always would be, completely gone for a strong, mature woman. I loved the faint lines by her eyes, a testament to time's gentle kiss. I loved the unyielding resilience in her soul. She never brought up the age gap again after that. For her to bring it up now, could it be pre-wedding jitters? As my mind raced, the floating comments reappeared. "Okay, Leo's line was perfect. It's not like you weren't 8 years older than me yesterday. I ship it. I ship it." Is this story switching genres from a powerful female CEO revenge plot to a sweet romance? I'm here for it. Don't forget the original male lead, People. He's still waiting for the heroine to come back to him. I don't know, the way she looks at this Leo seems way more intense than how she ever looked at the original guy. It just occurred to me, in the original ending, the heroine drives the female villain's company into bankruptcy. Maybe she was doing it to get revenge for this scumbag. The comments kept scrolling. The original guy they were talking about must have been a real idiot. I'm 25, in my absolute prime. Skylar is 33, a force of nature. Talk about a match made in heaven. That's us. 10. For the next 2 days, I practically forced Skylar to undergo a full battery of tests at the hospital, from blood work to a brain CT scan. Even the nurses were laughing at how overly cautious we were. She was getting annoyed, standing with her hands on her hips and glaring at me. It was only when the doctor came back with a thick stack of reports, confirming she had just fainted from low blood sugar and exhaustion, that I finally breathed a sigh of relief and quickly handled the discharge paperwork. On the day we left, the middle-aged couple who had approached me before found me again. The DNA results were in. I told Skylar what was happening and asked her to come with me. She was silent, not saying a word. I thought she was nervous, so I smiled and said, "Think of it as meeting your future in-laws. If you don't like them, I'll tell them to get lost." That made her laugh. A laugh like a flower blooming in March, the kind that makes you want to kiss her. The floating comments became active again. Ah, Leo is being so honest this time. He's not even hiding his parent from the heroine. I hope he can stand up to the pressure. If he gets through this, I'll officially retract my scumbag label. Wait a minute. Did anyone else notice the heroine is in a VIP suite? Those cost thousands a day. Holy crap, the person above is right. I need to scroll back and see when they got so rich. I ignored the comments and walked into the designated coffee shop, holding Skylar's hand. As soon as we sat down, the middle-aged man saw Skylar and froze for a second. He stood up and gave a slight nod. "Ms. Raines." "Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes," Skylar replied politely. I was completely lost. "He's the chairman of Starbrew," Skylar said. Her tone clipped. It clicked. I looked at the couple, exasperated. After Hugh Brew's locations spread across the country, plenty of competitors tried to get a piece of the pie. Starbrew was the most shameless of them all. We'd spend a fortune on market research to find the perfect location, and they would stick to us like glue, like a persistent shadow. If there wasn't a storefront available, they'd literally set up a kiosk in a shipping container right next to us. 11. Mrs. Hayes's gaze toward Skylar was clearly hostile, but she didn't say anything. She just motioned for her husband to hand me the manila envelope. I opened it. The report read, "The test results support the stated biological relationship." Mrs. Hayes immediately shot up from her seat and opened her arms, ready to embrace me, probably trying to stage some dramatic mother-son reunion. I instinctively sidestepped. This sudden intimacy felt deeply uncomfortable. The man cleared his throat, his eyes shifting to Skylar. "Ms. Raines, may I ask what your relationship is with my son?" Here it is, the classic break up the happy couple scene. "Hold strong, Leo. Don't let your parents brainwash you. If he dumps Ms. Raines, I'll lose all faith in love." The smile on Skylar's face faded. Her voice was neutral. "Leo is a partner in my company." I squeezed her hand, then looked up to meet Mr. Hayes's scrutinizing gaze and added, "And her fiancé." Then I shot Skylar a look full of mock indignation, as if to say, "Is that all I am to you?" "Absolutely not," Mrs. Hayes yelped, pointing a finger at Skylar. "She's 8 years older than you. You are not a suitable match." I turned back to her, my tone sharp. "Lady, who the hell are you to have any say in our lives?" "I'm your mother," she gasped, her face turning pale with rage. "How can you speak to me like that?" "Leo, watch your tone." Mr. Hayes's face darkened. "And you, old man, don't butt in unless you're spoken to." I stood up and slapped the DNA report on the table. I agreed to this test because I thought it would be nice to have parents present at my wedding. That doesn't give you the right to dictate my life. You think you can just show up and call the shots? I took Skylar's hand. Her fingers were a little cold. "Let's go." Behind us, I could hear Mrs. Hayes's furious shouting, but the comments in front of my eyes were cheering wildly. "Leo is a badass. I'm totally standing him for this." So this is the protective power of a younger boyfriend. It's off the charts. Holy crap, the scumbag has evolved into a domineering CEO. Damn right, parents who haven't been around for 25 years don't get a say now. She took care of him for 7 years. What right do these outsiders have to judge? Once we were in the car, Skylar let out a soft sigh. "So you just burned that bridge, huh?" I started the engine, resting one hand on her thigh, feeling the smooth texture of her stockings. "Let burn. I don't care." I turned to look at her. "More importantly, you're not mad, are you?" "No," she smiled. "Actually, the way you told them off back there was pretty hot." A warmth spread through my chest. I reached over and tousled her hair. Damn right it was. "By the way, we can still make it to the courthouse before it closes. Want to get married?" She froze for a second, then nodded vigorously, the light in her eyes brighter than the afternoon sun. 12. After we got our marriage license, Skylar stared at the little red booklet for a long time. She suddenly looked up at me, pouting playfully. Just like that. "We're married? Not even a single flower." I pulled her into my arms, resting my chin on top of her head. "Tomorrow, I'll have everyone in the entire company send you flowers. We'll line them up from the lobby to the top floor." She laughed, and playfully punch my arm. Be serious. Honestly, not much changed after that. We still drove to the office together. She'd handle corporate matters in the chairperson's office, while I worked on new product formulas in the director's office next door. We'd still squeeze onto the sofa in her office for lunch, where she'd steal the crispy bacon from my club sandwich, and I'd sneak the best shrimp from her Cobb salad. We'd still walk home hand in hand after dinner, the streetlights stretching our shadows behind us. But with wedding planning and a major company expansion, our free time dwindled to almost nothing. One night, around 2 a.m., I was in the study looking over the wedding itinerary when I saw Skylar had fallen asleep at her desk, her computer screen still glowing with an unfinished quarterly report. I walked over quietly and saw the faint, bluish circles under her eyes. My heart ached. As I gently lifted her into my arms to carry her to bed, she mumbled sleepily, grabbing my collar. The wedding dress has to be midnight blue. This kind of happiness, filled to the brim with shared hustle, felt more real than any sweet nothings. My so-called biological parents kept trying to contact me. At first, their tone softened. Mrs. Hayes cried on the phone, apologizing. "Leo, honey, your mother was just overwhelmed that day. Please don't hold it against me." But before I could respond, she changed her tune. "But I'm only looking out for you. Skylar is so much older, and she grew up an orphan. Women like that are calculating. They aren't as pure and simple as a nice young girl." I hung up and blocked all their numbers. If they couldn't get it through their heads, then there was no point in having them at my wedding to cause a scene. When Skylar found out, she just gently patted my back. "Don't be angry." 13. One evening, as I was leaving the office building, a woman in a white dress stopped me. She had long, flowing hair and a perfectly made-up face, with 2 faint dimples when she smiled. She looked vaguely familiar. "Leo, it's been a while," she said in a soft voice. It took me a few seconds, then a fragment of the original Leo's memory surfaced. Victoria Vance. His high school crush, the one who sat by the window. She came from a wealthy family, the girl he had secretly adored for 3 years, but never worked up the courage to speak to. The comments started scrolling furiously. "The female villain has entered the chat. Isn't that Leo's old crush, Victoria Vance? Oh God, she's gorgeous. Please don't let Leo waver. I want sweet romance, not a damn love triangle. Wait, I remember at this point in the story, Victoria is already pregnant. Leo, don't be an idiot and play the hero. Leo's already married. The nerve of her to show up now. She's a homewrecker. Get lost." I lower my eyes. So this was the woman who cheated on the original Leo in the original story. "Can I help you?" My voice was flat, betraying no emotion. Victoria fidgeted with the hem of her dress. "Leo, actually, I'm your fiancé." I almost laughed out loud. It didn't take a genius to figure out my parents were behind this. Not wanting to waste my breath on her, I turned and started walking toward the parking garage. But she grabbed my sleeve, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't go. I know you're with Skylar Rains now, but she's so much older than you. She's not right for you." Employees leaving for the day were starting to notice the commotion. Their pointing and staring made my skin crawl. Terrified that some ugly rumor would get back to Skylar, I pulled my marriage certificate from the inner pocket of my suit jacket and held it up in front of her face. "Miss, I am a married man, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't cause a scene in public." Victoria's face flushed crimson, like a boiled lobster. The murmuring around us grew louder. "Who is this woman? Trying to hit on the director? She looks so put together, but she has no shame. Didn't you see? He literally just showed her his marriage certificate. How embarrassing. Ha ha ha. Total public humiliation for the villain. So satisfying. But the real point is that Leo carries his marriage certificate with him. What kind of god-tier move is that? Duh. He's a hopeless romantic. Carrying the certificate is basic procedure for him. This is how you treat your wife." Just then, an arm slipped through mine, bringing with it a familiar, comforting scent. "Excuse me, miss." Skylar's voice was ice cold, her eyes sharp as daggers. "Is there something you need from my husband?" I turned to look at her and couldn't help but smile. "What are you doing down here?" "Making sure some little fox doesn't lure you away," she said, raising an eyebrow, but I could see the smile hiding in her eyes. Victoria stood frozen, her head bowed, so low it was almost touching her chest, twisting the fabric of her dress. She looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. Finally, unable to stand the stairs, she covered her face and ran off. I squeezed Skylar's hand. Her fingers were a little cool. Jealous? No, she said, though she hugged my arm even tighter. She was just in the way. The setting sun merged our shadows into one. I leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Don't worry. I only have eyes for a real woman. Any idiot can chase after a girl." She didn't say anything, just rolled her eyes dramatically. But the curve of her lips was sweeter than the sunset. 14. I thought that after that public humiliation, Victoria Vance would get the hint and back off. I was wrong. She stuck to me like gum on a hot sidewalk, relentlessly trying to get my attention. Sometimes she'd wait for me outside the office. Other times she'd send vague, flirty texts, reminiscing about our good old days in high school. At first, I just patiently ignored her. But eventually, her persistence got on my last nerve. I didn't bother confronting her directly. Instead, I had someone look into her family's business. It turned out they were a major food supplier, and they happened to have a few contracts with Hugh Brew. I didn't do anything drastic. I just instructed our purchasing department to conduct a more rigorous quality control audit on their materials and rerouted a few upcoming projects to other suppliers. It wasn't long before I heard the Vance family was having some minor cash flow problems. Preoccupied with her own family's issues, Victoria finally stopped contacting me. 15. On our wedding day, the sun was exceptionally bright. Skylar, in her midnight blue wedding gown, stood at the other end of the aisle, so beautiful I couldn't look away. When the officiant asked if I would take her to be my wife, I practically shouted, "I do." As we exchanged rings, I saw tears glistening in her eyes. I smiled and wiped one away. "Why are you crying?" "This is a happy day." "I'm happy," she choked out, squeezing my hand tightly. During the reception, I noticed Mr. and Mrs. Hayes had come in with some of our corporate guests. They were dressed in elegant, appropriate attire and looked a bit awkward. They were much more subdued than the last time we'd met. When we made our way to their table, Mr. Hayes handed me a folder. "Leo, congratulations on your wedding. This is a portion of our company's shares. A small gift from your mother and me." I was taken aback. I opened the folder. It was a significant number of shares. Skylar nudged my arm. I knew what she meant. This was a once-in-a-lifetime day. We shouldn't let anything ruin it. Besides, it would be stupid to turn down free money. "Thank you," I said, accepting the folder. I paused, then finally said it. "Dad, Mom." They clearly hadn't expected that. They froze, and their eyes instantly reddened. Mrs. Hayes started to reach for my hand, but hesitated. In the end, she just wiped away a tear. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good boy." Skylar followed my lead, greeting them gracefully as Mom and Dad. 16. Married life was peaceful and sweet. Skylar said she wanted to have a baby, preferably a boy to inherit the family business. I said I'd rather have a daughter, one who was as beautiful as her mother. Strangely, after the wedding, those annoying floating comments never appeared again. It was as if every sweet story is supposed to end with the line, "and they lived happily ever after." But I knew our story was just beginning. About a year into our marriage, I noticed a change in Skylar after she became pregnant. She started looking at me with a strange expression in her eyes. Every time I asked her about it, she'd say it was nothing. Until one night, 17, ever since Skylar got pregnant, all the business dinners and corporate events fell on my shoulders. Every time I came home late, smelling of alcohol, she would have a warm glass of honey water ready for me. She'd sit on the edge of the bed, gently wiping my face, her eyes full of concern. Tonight was another one of those nights. A business partner had pushed drink after drink on me, and my head felt like it was full of lead. I managed to take a quick shower and collapsed into bed. In a hazy state, I felt someone place a soft, familiar-smelling kiss on my forehead. There were only two of us in this house. Without a second thought, I wrapped my arms around her waist and, fueled by the alcohol, responded with passion. The next morning, I snapped my eyes open. The doctor's words suddenly flashed in my mind. No intercourse during the first trimester. A jolt of panic shot through me. I threw back the covers, but the person lying next to me made my blood run cold. It wasn't Skylar. It was Mia Lynn, her assistant. Mia was a pretty, reserved woman, 3 years older than me, and a notorious workaholic. She and Skylar had grown up in the same foster home. She'd been with Skylar since graduation, working by her side as they built the company. They were as close as sisters. Skylar always treated her like family. 18. I cheated. The thought was a dagger twisting in my heart. I couldn't imagine Skylar's reaction when she found out. The image of her disappointed eyes, her welling tears, just the thought of it was suffocating. Mia was woken by my sudden movement. She sat up without a word, her face a blank mask, and began to get dressed. Just then the bedroom door opened, and Skylar walked in. She was wearing a loose maternity dress and carrying a bowl of oatmeal. She saw the scene in the room and stopped short. Panic seized me. I started rambling, trying to explain. Sky, listen to me. I was drunk last night. I don't know what happened. But Skylar's reaction was the last thing I expected. There was no anger on her face. Instead, she looked calmly at Mia, who was now at the door, and said, Mia, you can go for now. Mia nodded and slipped out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. The room was silent, the air thick and heavy. We were alone. My heart hammered against my ribs, bracing for the inevitable accusation. But Skylar just walked over to the bedside table, set down the bowl of oatmeal, and winked at me playfully. So, honey, how was it last night? Huh? I was utterly bewildered, convinced I was still dreaming. She sat down next to me, her hand coming up to cup my cheek. Her tone was shockingly casual. I'm pregnant, and I know you must have been feeling frustrated. For now on, how about we let Mia take care of you? Her words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I stared at her, dumbfounded, unable to believe what I was hearing. I knew Skylar had always felt a little insecure about our age difference. I was constantly reassuring her, telling her that I loved her for who she was and that age didn't matter. But I never, ever imagined she would do something this extreme. Sharing her husband, my mind went completely blank. I was offline. Seeing my lack of reaction, Skylar suddenly hugged me, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly. Honey, I have a secret I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. The truth is, I've been reborn. What? My entire worldview was shattering. As Skylar spoke, I slowly pieced together the story of her previous life. She had been reborn on the very day I was supposed to propose to her. In her past life, the original Leo had loved her deeply for a time. But after experiencing the wider world in college, he began to change, constantly asking her for money. When he found out he had wealthy biological parents, he dumped her without a second thought to return to his family. Devastated, she went to confront him, only to be brutally humiliated by his parents, who told her she would never be good enough for their son. Fueled by a desire for revenge, she started her own business. The journey was incredibly difficult, but a senior from her college days was always there to help her. Just as her career was taking off, she received news that the original Leo and his parents had died in a tragic accident. Unwilling to accept it, she investigated secretly and discovered it was all Victoria Vance's doing. She had orchestrated their deaths and seized their family fortune. Skylar poured all her resources into a new fight, eventually managing to destroy the Vance Corporation and avenge the original Leo. By then, the college senior who had always supported her proposed. She was almost 40, tired and worn out by life. She accepted, but their marriage was as lifeless as stagnant water. They lived together in silence, completely unhappy. A year later, they divorced. On the way back from finalizing the divorce, they were in a car accident. When she opened her eyes again, she was back on the day the original Leo was supposed to break up with her. But she quickly realized this wasn't her past. It was a parallel world, because the man standing in front of her, me, was completely different from the Leo she remembered. It was only after I met you that I started living the life I'd always dreamed of, Skylar said, her voice thick with emotion. But after we got married and life settled down, my mind started to run wild. I felt guilty. In my past life, I was with 2 different men. But you've only ever been with me. And I was scared. Scared you'd get bored of me and cheat. I can't even imagine how devastated I would be if you ever left me. A while ago, I found out that Mia is into women. I saw her picking up a pair of stockings I'd thrown out to take home. Skylar hesitated, as if the words were hard to say. I was going to fire her, but she begged me to let her stay, and I had a crazy idea. I thought if she was the one to take care of you, you wouldn't go looking for someone else. And if it had to be someone, I trust her. She agreed to it. Listening to her, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, heartbreak, and a strange sense of amusement. This foolish woman, my wife, had concocted this insane plan because of these absurd fears. I pulled her into a tight hug, resting my chin on her head. My voice was hoarse. Skylar, are you an idiot? The only person I have ever loved is you. That's how it was, how it is, and how it always will be. Why would you ever think I'd go looking for someone else? After clearing the air about Mia, a crucial question popped into my head. Hey, it never occurred to you that I might be reborn too? And that's why I was so good to you this time around. Isn't that how it always goes in those novels? The scumbag is reborn, sees the error of his ways, and spends his new life doting on his wife. Skylar, who had been twisting a button on my shirt, rolled her eyes dramatically. I'm not an idiot. You and him are nothing alike. My curiosity was piqued. I leaned in closer. How so? She tilted her chin up, a mischievous glint in her eyes. You're way more of a pervert than he ever was. No way. That's slander. I shot back, my voice cracking. Skylar just hummed and started counting on her fingers. When I used to give him gifts, designer clothes, expensive watches, his eyes would practically glue themselves to the items. He'd have this huge, greedy grin. But when I give you those things, you barely glance at them. The first thing you do is pull out a pair of black stockings and tell me to put them on. You said, and I quote, "Holidays are for spicing things up for your man, and this is the best gift you could give me." Have you forgotten that? My face flushed red. I rubbed my nose, suddenly at a loss for words. She wasn't wrong. When your girlfriend is that beautiful, of course you want to see her in beautiful things. That's just because I think you look good in anything. I mumbled, my fingers nervously picking at the bedsheets. Skylar's grin widened, and she pinched my cheek. There's more. When I went shopping with him, his eyes were always glued to the luxury stores. You, on the other hand, should I pull up your Amazon search history? Stop. I quickly covered her mouth, terrified she was about to air all my dirty laundry. Okay, I get it. I admit it. I'm a pervert, Happy. She pulled my hand away, the laughter dancing in her eyes. It's not just that. You helped me turn a tiny tea shop into a public company. He never would have had the brains or the drive for that. Well, that's true. To make things fair, I told Skylar my own secret, that I was from another world entirely. Since she had been so honest with me, I didn't want to hide anything from her anymore. Skylar finally understood. She had been reborn, but into a world where the scumbag's soul had been replaced. After some gentle prodding, Skylar finally opened up about the college senior from her past life. A quick investigation revealed that he had gotten married in an arranged match shortly after Skylar and I tied the knot. A wave of relief washed over me. That strange little prickle of jealousy I felt finally vanished. Meanwhile, I began to slowly take over the operations of my biological parents' corporation. After a lot of research, I decided to overhaul the business, modeling our new strategy after the disruptive, blitzscaling approach of brands that use deep discounts and rapid expansion to dominate the market. I cut redundant projects, focused our resources on core products, and utilized a hybrid online-offline model to expand our reach. In just 1 year, the company grew exponentially, capturing significant market share in several key cities. As for Victoria Vance and her family, once word got out that they were on my bad side, their lives became much more difficult. The Vance Corporation found itself ostracized in the business world. Partners terminated their contracts, and their cash flow dried up. After struggling for less than 6 months, the family was forced to sell their company and quietly move abroad. But not every problem in my life could be solved so easily. Mia was a persistent headache. After that one incident, she seemed to have moved in permanently, using the excuse that she needed to take care of the pregnant Skylar. I wanted to kick her out, but Skylar didn't object. In fact, she'd constantly praise her. Look how great Mia is. She's so capable and attentive. With her here, it takes so much pressure off me. She kept trying to convince me to accept Mia into our lives. Worn down by their combined efforts, I finally gave in. So now, the three of us share a bed. Skylar sleeps peacefully in the middle, with Mia and me on either side. Every morning, I wake up, see Mia lying there, and think about how utterly absurd the situation is. But then I look at Skylar, sleeping so soundly, and it somehow feels not so bad. Whatever. I guess I'll just enjoy my wife's unique arrangements.